I woke up kind of sick this morning, so this is actually a really good time for me to make this video because I'm all snuggled up in my sweatpants and hoodie, and that's also how I always read my books. So today's video is a book review about a recent book that I've read, and I feel like this can come off as like boring, like who reads books these days and why are we talking about it? Not boring, very cool. And the reason I have been able to do as much as I've been able to do in the last decade, since barely graduating high school, working 2 jobs when I was 16, and getting evicted from my childhood home, is because I started reading books and going to seminars and just filling my head with the right information. So it's actually a really cool topic once you get into it and start to find your groove within it. So just a quick background on reading in general. Obviously in high school I read, the bare minimum of what I needed to get decent grades. And then after high school, I ended up joining this network marketing company that had a phenomenal leadership program. And that's when I really started getting into reading. So you're talking anywhere from books on leadership to human nature and communication to business tactics to running a team, like just whatever. And at that time, I was so everything was so void for me. I hadn't learned much of anything. Honestly, had a really hard time just holding down a conversation with another person because I just didn't trust people. So I had a long way to go. So I was very open to just reading whatever my friends and mentors shot my way. So I would read, one year I read like 26 books in that year. Some of those books were really hefty, like 600 pages. So yeah, I definitely got into the swing of things. And then I moved to Florida when I was 21, and I noticed that I kind of stopped reading as much, and I started listening more to podcast type keynote speeches on YouTube from people like Gary Vee. So I kind of put the physical books down for a bit to do audiobooks, podcasts, things like that. And so now I'm kind of cycling back into reading physical books just because I want to make it part of my routine again, where it helps me calm down at night before I go to bed because my brain just runs at a million miles per hour. And so I went to Barnes & Noble a couple months ago to kind of get back into the groove of reading, and I didn't really have a plan, so I just went to the business section and started reading through books, and then this one caught my eye. So this book is called Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferriss. I know that's sorry, it's really bright. Tim Ferriss is also known for his book called The 4-Hour Workweek. So this book is really cool, and essentially what he did is he interviewed 100 plus people who have all been successful in their fields, and he asked them the same set of questions. And then the whole book is just those interviews with these people. So the book was fascinating, and I had a really awesome time reading it. And the whole point is not to read every single page and every single interview and every single question. Tim's goal for this book was for you to pay attention to what was popping out to you at the time. So I just want to run you through some of these questions and the things that were popping out to me, and then bring a little bit of context to like why those things were popping out to me, and then just kind of share a couple of my favorite things from this book. So I'm going to be like going back and forth because my notes are on my computer just to share it, but I'm just going to go question by question and then kind of go from there. So question 1, what is one of the most worthwhile investments you've ever made? So a couple people said things like while they're working a full-time job, they had this little voice in their head that told them to go take this extracurricular class that had nothing to do with their career. And then years later, that ended up leading them to certain connections, which got them hired to write. And then they ended up producing a New York Times bestseller book. Another person said heart rate variability training meditation, which actually comes up multiple times in this book. So I found that kind of interesting and wrote that down. Transcendental meditation, that's another one that was pretty popular in this book. And then this other person said they went to a 9-day intensive retreat when they were not in a crisis. So I think at the time she had gone through a breakup with her boyfriend and then signed up for the retreat. But by the time the retreat came, she was no longer in a crisis. But she went anyways. And she said essentially what it did is it took her already clear vision to the top of a personal high mountain where she could clearly see what she wanted to happen next in her life. So she said, never let a good crisis go to waste. But when you're not in a crisis, don't wait for a crisis to happen before you take the next steps to go beyond what you're capable of seeing on your own. So I really liked that because it's like we're not always in a crisis. We go through seasons. So when we're not in a crisis, like take the opportunity to go learn more of what we already know. And then when we are in a crisis, obviously go seek that same type of learning and growth, just for different reasons. Question 2. In the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life? 8 to 9 hours of sleep. I guard my sleep time mercilessly. So this is another big trend in this book, is that people are no joke on the discipline of their sleep, and they don't let other people get in the way of them getting it. This other person said that like the secret to changing and growing is not willpower, but positive community. So he met a group of dudes in Malibu, and now they all work out together every day. And it's just the positive community is what has led him to being the fittest he's ever been in his life. Figuring out how to be as happy and satisfied as you can be in your life right now. Maximize your uptime and minimize your downs. The key to a great life is simply having a bunch of great days. That sounds like super simple, but I really do think it's as simple as that. And I say that because since moving to Florida, I would say that the majority of my days have been great, which has inherently made my life pretty great. And that wasn't always the case. I would say the majority of my life was very, very bad days. And so my life kind of sucked D for a very, very long time. And so I think that one's really simple, but it's like, how can you maximize having a great life? Do you need to discontinue hanging out with certain people that are toxic? Start eating better, start working out, start reading and going to seminars, start learning how to communicate better with your spouse. Like there's so many things that we have control over to maximize our lives being a little bit better. So I really liked that one. I like this person's too, because I actually really agree with it. I don't have a gratitude, peace, or forgiveness practice. I see this as turning away from a truth that is trying to get your attention, and then it's forcing a lie. This is like putting a Band-Aid over a wound so you don't have to look at it, which is a problem because that wound, if you continue to not deal with it, will ultimately start to fester. So I love that one because I do feel like all over Instagram, it's people are like, oh, so blessed, just living a blessed life. And like, oh, how are you doing? Just blessed and grateful. And there's nothing wrong with being blessed and grateful. But I do think a lot of times we think that that's what we're supposed to say. And then actually what's happening on the inside is a bunch of shit going on that we're not dealing with versus just being like, you know what? I'm actually having a really crappy day because I feel sick today, but no big deal because I've got some solutions and I'm taking some like vitamin water and whatever. But I do think that I like that because there is the possibility that when you're just like, oh, grateful and blessed, you're shoving things under the rug that probably aren't as good as you are making other people believe them to be. So like, there's nothing wrong with being honest. Share your struggles, share the awesome things that are happening in your life, but like share them equally. And you don't need to make everything about being blessed. Question number 3, when you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, what do you do? I really liked this section of questions. And I say that because I have found myself getting, this last year, I've been getting overwhelmed in a way that I never have before. And I don't yet have solutions to set in place to kind of like, I guess you could say it's because my creative work has gone up significantly, as in I need to be able to go into deep work in my mind and not get distracted. And I just feel distracted all the time. And I'm trying to bounce back and forth from different projects. And so it's been a lot on me creatively. And so I've just been looking for solutions. And so I like that this question popped up. And everybody pretty much had similar answers. So I get out of my head and into my body, go on a walk downtown, I go swimming or go to the farmer's market. I ask myself, what would be the worst thing about the outcome not going the way that I want? I read creative writing because it stimulates my creative thoughts, and that's where I get big ideas. Overwhelm is about mentally managing what's coming from outside yourself, while being unfocused is about mentally managing what's going on inside. I distinguish between an opportunity to be seized and a temptation to be resisted. Simple evolutionary reality is what inhibits so many people from rapidly improving their lives. I don't know what that one means. I don't know why I wrote that down. I go on a walk, preferably on a route I've never taken before. Walking in a new direction towards something I've never seen before does the trick. I take a walk. I get lost in a bookshop, watch a movie, go for a swim. Your mind and body are solving problems that you can't face head on. So the biggest thing I liked there was that a lot of people said that they went on a walk. Like they got out of their mind or out of their head and into their body. And I have noticed that I started taking walks this year, which I've never done before. And then Derek and I went to New York City for 4 days, and we just like walked 30,000 miles, and it like really helped me get out of my head. And I also think that's the thing that helps me come up with my next ideas. Okay, so the next question was, what book have you given most as a gift, or we would recommend, or have highly influenced your life? Not going to read this list because it was a very, very big list. But I will say that in this list, there's a lot of patterns of history. So these people who are successful in their fields enjoy history because they're trying to not make the same mistakes that have been made by people in the past. So I noticed that pattern. The other ones are a lot about your mindset, man's search for meaning, different things about humans and how human nature works. So I thought those patterns were pretty cool. What advice would you give to a smart, driven college student who's about to enter the real world? This was a lot of conflicting information, but there was a lot of really good stuff that they had to say. I do not believe that your best creative work is done when you're stressed out because you're teetering on the edge of bankruptcy or other personal disasters. Set up your life to be as comfortable and happy as possible so that it accommodates your creative work. I really liked that one because I had been taught mixed things when I was 18 and joined the network marketing company. And some of the people taught that you should burn all your bridges and work out of desperation. And at the time, I didn't really know what I believed, so I kind of did a little bit of both, but I definitely don't agree with the one where you should be in desperation, because I think other people can smell desperation, and I think it's really difficult to be creative when you're desperate. So I definitely agree with that one. If your curiosity ever leads you to a place where society eventually wants to go, you'll get paid extremely well. So just being ahead of the curve. Experiment on both sides of CEO and working for someone else. You're not inferior for doing one or the other. It all depends on your personality, goals, and what you want from a lifestyle. Okay, so this is another important one in network marketing. They teach you a lot about being an entrepreneur, about being a CEO, right? And that makes sense because that's what you're essentially training somebody to do that and to lead a team. But then there's this aura of like being an entrepreneur is way better than being like working in corporate. And that's definitely not true. Like they're for sure different, and we're all better for one or the other. But especially now, because of technology and all the resources that we have, you can absolutely be both. I've met a lot of people who are both, who provide skill sets to both angles. So I like that one because I think you should experiment. I've done both. I'm doing both. And I like doing both, and I don't really know when that's going to change. So ask me in 10 years. Think carefully about when is the right time to help. Help yourself first before you help others. So this one was talking about a lot of philanthropists that were going to college and they want to come out and go help people in third world countries. And she's like, yeah, that's great, but if you can't even take care of yourself, it's really difficult to help other people. So she recommends that they build their careers doing something that they're very skilled in. And then once they have the resources to go help other people, but like try helping yourself first, getting your foundation set. Because you also have to imagine if you're going out and helping other people, but you never set up your foundation, that probably means somebody else is footing the bill for your lifestyle. So that's something to think about. Fill your mind with the best of humanity's timeless lessons on fundamental human nature. So that one's all over the book. Macro patience, micro speed. Don't care about the next 8 years, care about the next 8 days. People are wasting their days worried about the years. It needs to be the opposite. This is from Gary Vaynerchuk, who very, very big in the marketing and media space. And so he says this whole concept of like, we're all so worried about where we need to be in 5 years, when we need to get married and have kids. And then we're not so worried about in our daily lives. Like we go home and watch Netflix, we go to the bar, we waste a lot of time like on the micro aspect of our days, but we freak out about the years. He says we need to switch that around, stop thinking about the 8 years from now and stop thinking about the next 8 hours. Like what can you do today to get you to where you want to be in the next 8 years? Listen to your inner voice when it tells you what to choose. It's your ability to wait for the right moment rather than rushing about aimlessly that can lead even an ambitious success hunter to capture the biggest game. In this century, oh man, I really like this one. In this century, people need to be extremely resilient and emotionally balanced to sail through this never-ending storm and to deal with very high levels of stress. It's very hard to teach emotional intelligence and resilience. You must make technology serve you instead of you serving it. You have no choice but to get to know yourself better. Know who you are and what you want from life. Your competition is Google, Facebook, Amazon, and the government. They're all relying on big data and machine learning to get to know you better. We are not living in an era of hacking computers. We are living in an era of hacking humans. Once the corporations and governments know you better than you know yourself, they could control and manipulate you, and you won't even realize it. If you want to stay in the game, you have to run faster than Google. Oh, that's such a good one. All right, question number 5. How has a failure or apparent failure set you up for later success? I'm not going to do that question. I'll do one from there. Okay, so this guy said, high volume of gymnastics training inevitably had some crazy carryover to my acrobatic moves when my ankle was near full recovery. The ankle sprain triggered a huge transformation that has kept me going to this day. So that one resonated with me because I've been injured for what feels like 3 years, and I've had to just essentially restart on a daily basis and not really do the things that I want to be doing, but the things that I can do. And so I have noticed that oftentimes getting injured or getting sick or having a child are the very things that force you to work on things that you never would have before, but then they end up adding to your success later and your results. Okay, so there's this section where he asks questions like, what's the best thing you've bought for $100 or less? And so there's like really cool tips of things to buy. So when you're reading through the book, you're kind of figuring out where you are. and certain things stick out to you. So there's like a Subpack M2 wearable physical sound system. So it lets you feel the vibration of the music through your body while you're listening to music or podcasts or whatever. So I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. Gonna look into that. The Back Buddy, which is a self-massage machine. There's this one called, it's like a sleep mask. There's earplugs for sleeping. There's an inner balance biofeedback monitor. Hip exercise tutorials and stretching with bands to open things up. So like those are all the things that I wrote down, which makes complete sense because I'm currently injured. So I'm looking for resources, and I'm starting to travel more, and and just like in general, my sleep sucks. And so I'm like looking for solutions for things like that. So that's like a little cool list I wrote down. And then number 8, what are bad recommendations that you hear in your profession? Too often, creatives try to make their creative work their only source of income. I think it's a road to misery. Mercenary pressure is the enemy of the creative elves inside you trying to get the work done. Having another stream of income drains the pressure on your creative engine. I still tutor kids even after 3 books and a hefty movie deal. So I like that one too because I never even knew that I was a creative until the last 3 years when I started being forced to do creative work for our company. And now I'm making like relationships with other companies who are using me to produce creative work. And it takes such a toll on you that it's something that you have to learn to protect, like meticulously protect. And I'm starting to learn that. And I like that she said that, like, stop making it your main thing, because then when the pressure's on you, it just like puts your brain in this jail that you don't want to be in. Improve your general judgment and your ability to accurately perceive your situation, your possible options, and the trade-offs involved. Some people need to take more risks, while others need to take fewer risks. Some need to ease up on themselves, and some need to work harder. So that's just self-awareness, like figuring out where you are and constantly reassessing yourself to figure out what to do next. So those are just some of my notes from this book, and that's not even all of them, but some of the biggest things that popped out to me were what do you do when you're overwhelmed, right? Just gaining some knowledge on some patterns that I need to start implementing into my life, so that I can just stop working when I need to and go refresh and go on a walk and maybe take some trips to New York City a couple times a year to just get inspiration. I loved that a lot of these people started talking about transcendental meditation. There's another one that was the heart rate one, which I thought looked fascinating. So I'm going to start doing more research on that this year to see if that's a potential something I'm going to add into my, daily routine / lifestyle. And then I liked the patterns of the books that people read, and I liked their advice. Everybody was so different. I think that was the coolest part, is all these people are successful in their fields, and they don't all have the same answers. There's definitely patterns, but then some of them have polar opposite answers. So it's just a matter of doing what you need to do until the job gets done. Gaining self-awareness, learning yourself, executing the proper disciplines, and then just having patience until the job gets done. So that was a book review. If you want to buy the book, I'll put the link in the description page. But that book was called Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferriss. And now we are going on to the next one.